What if everything you spent years building was suddenly taken away from you? What if the very people who were supposed to support you were the first to call you a failure? This is the story of Elizabeth Carter, a woman who dedicated her life to education, only to be humiliated and discarded as if she were worthless. Unjustly fired, ridiculed by her own family, she hit rock bottom. But when no one believed in her, she believed in herself. And what happened next? They expected her to disappear. Instead, she became someone they would never dare to underestimate again. How did she do it? Stay with me until the end, because this story will make you rethink everything you thought was impossible. Make sure to subscribe for more inspiring stories of resilience and transformation. The teacher's lounge was too quiet. Elizabeth clutched the brown envelope with trembling hands, her heart pounding. The principal's desk seemed more imposing than usual. The man sitting across from her, Mr. Thompson, intertwined his fingers over the desk, his expression unreadable. "The school needs innovation, Elizabeth." His voice was cold, bureaucratic. "You're good at what you do, but you're outdated. We need someone more dynamic." The words felt like a punch to the stomach. She blinked, trying to absorb what he had just said. Outdated? Her voice came out weaker than she wanted. "I have dedicated my life to this school. My students have the best results, my classes have always been praised." Mr. Thompson sighed and leaned back in his chair, as if explaining something obvious. "That's true, but the world has changed. Students don't want just books and a chalkboard anymore, Elizabeth. They need technology, modern methodologies." He pushed the envelope toward her. "You still resist using digital platforms, and that's no longer acceptable." Elizabeth felt her face heat up. She knew teaching was changing. In the hallways, younger teachers talked about augmented reality, artificial intelligence in education. They used tablets, interactive apps, short-form videos that captured students' attention. But she always believed in the power of traditional teaching. Books. Handwriting. Classroom discussions. She hadn't realized when that stopped being enough. Swallowing her pain, she opened the envelope with hesitant fingers. Her name was printed at the top of the letter. The words, "contract termination," screamed from the page. She wanted to protest, to shout that this wasn't fair. But deep down, she knew the decision was already made. She slowly stood up. So this is how it ends. After more than 20 years. Mr. Thompson simply adjusted his tie. Times change. That was it. The final chapter of her career. Elizabeth left the office without saying goodbye to anyone. The hallway felt longer, her steps heavier. Some teachers avoided her gaze. Others whispered among themselves. She could feel their pity. What were they thinking? Poor woman, she never adapted. The shame burned inside her. What now? The biting November cold greeted her as she stepped outside. Dry leaves danced along the asphalt, and Elizabeth felt the wind sting her face. She clutched her purse against her chest and quickened her pace toward the car. Her fingers were white-knuckled when she turned the key in the ignition. But it wasn't the temperature that made her eyes fill with tears. It was fear. She had spent years helping students find their paths. But now, who would help her? The drive home had never felt so short. Or maybe it was the weight in her chest that made her wish the road would stretch forever. When she opened the door, she found Daniel, her husband, sitting on the couch with a cup of coffee. He looked up from the newspaper, frowning at her distressed expression. What happened? Elizabeth closed the door behind her, trying to summon the strength to say the words out loud. "I was fired." For a moment, silence filled the room. But what followed was an even harsher blow than anything the principal had said. Daniel sighed, shaking his head as he set his coffee down on the table. I told you, Liz. You needed to update yourself. Now what? Are you just going to sit at home living off of me? She felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. That's all you have to say. He shrugged. What do you want me to say? That it's unfair. That's life. You should have adapted. A lump formed in her throat. Before she could respond, she heard a low chuckle from the other room. Tyler, their 17-year-old son, was sitting on the couch, playing on his phone. He didn't even look at her as he spoke. I knew this was going to happen. Even your students didn't like your classes anymore, Mom. Everyone prefers teachers who know how to use new technology. The disdain in his voice stabbed her deeper than anything else that day. Is that how you talk to me? Her voice wavered. He finally glanced up, shrugged, then returned his attention to the screen. Elizabeth felt tears forming, but she refused to let them fall. The school discarded her. Her husband belittled her. And now, her own son. She clenched the termination letter in her hands. At that moment, she realized she had lost more than just a job. She had lost their respect. And perhaps, she had lost herself. In the days that followed, Elizabeth became a shadow of herself. She tried to stick to her usual routine, but everything was different now. Mornings no longer began with the alarm ringing early to get ready for school. Now, her time felt empty, purposeless. Her inbox, once filled with emails from students, principals, and meeting reminders, was eerily silent. And the quiet inside the house was deafening. She tried looking for another job. She sent out dozens of resumes to schools and educational centers, but no one wanted to hire a traditional teacher in a world that demanded technology. Responses never came. The phone never rang. The doors were closed. And inside her home, the tension was growing. Daniel barely spoke to her. He left early for work and came home late, always with that same look of disapproval. When he did talk, it was short and cold. Did you find anything? Elizabeth would just shake her head silently, unable to bear the judgment in his voice. Tyler, on the other hand, didn't even try to hide his impatience. If he had already been spending most of his time locked in his room, now he seemed to avoid any interaction with his mother. It doesn't make sense for you to stay home all day doing nothing, Mom. You should at least try something new. His words were casual, but to Elizabeth, they felt like a knife to the heart. As if it were that simple. Days turned into weeks, and the bills started piling up. Before, Elizabeth paid half of the household expenses with her salary. Electricity, internet, groceries, basic bills, everything was split between her and Daniel. It was a system that worked well, until now. Without her paycheck, their financial balance collapsed. Daniel couldn't cover everything alone, and little by little, the warning notices started arriving. Electricity bill overdue. Past due notice, internet service subject to disconnection. Pending payment, condo fee. Each notification felt like a dagger. She tried to talk to Daniel about it, but he just sighed, looking away. I knew this would happen. If you had prepared yourself earlier, we wouldn't be in this situation. Elizabeth didn't respond. The weight of guilt was already unbearable. Then, 2 weeks later, came the cruelest blow of all. They were running out of food. That night, exhausted, she went to the kitchen to make dinner. She opened the fridge and froze. The shelves were almost empty. A few bottles of water. A container with leftovers from the night before. A small piece of cheese. No meat. No vegetables. No milk. She stood there for a long moment, staring into the emptiness before her. How did it come to this? Elizabeth, the woman who had spent her life teaching, organizing, and being independent, now didn't even know how to rebuild herself. She slowly closed the fridge, pressing a hand to her face, taking a deep breath to keep from breaking down. I have to find a way out. Then, something caught her eye. In the corner of the kitchen, on top of a pile of old papers, sat a forgotten cardboard box. Elizabeth knelt down, sifting through some notebooks and lesson plans. She flipped through the pages quickly until, suddenly, something made her freeze. An old notebook, filled with notes she had written years ago. Her eyes scanned the handwritten titles on the pages. How to start investing with little money. The power of compound interest. Financial independence is possible for anyone. She flipped through more pages, finding graphs, calculations, notes on the stock market. Her heart began to race. This was an old hobby, something that had always fascinated her, but she had never taken it seriously. Now, reading those words, they made sense in a completely new way. Elizabeth bit her lip, a chill running down her spine. She had completely forgotten about this notebook. But now, as she stared at those words, something inside her awakened. Hope. What did she have to lose? She sat at the table, opened her old laptop, and typed into the search bar. How to start investing from scratch. As the results filled the screen, Elizabeth felt a spark of curiosity mixed with determination. She began reading, watching videos, taking notes. And that night, while Daniel slept and Tyler laughed quietly in his room, Elizabeth took the first step on the journey that would change her life forever. The first month was a disaster. Elizabeth had opened her investment account, excited about finally taking charge of her financial future. She read a few articles, watched some tutorial videos, and decided to take a risk. But despite her initial enthusiasm, things didn't go as expected. She bought stocks without fully understanding the charts. She invested based on internet recommendations without doing her own research. Before she knew it, her small capital had dropped significantly. Panic set in instantly. This isn't for me. I'll never understand this world. I'm just a former teacher, what was I thinking? Elizabeth felt defeated. She thought of the principal's words, of Daniel, of Tyler. Were they all right? Was she really too old to learn something new? That night, she sat on the couch, staring at her computer screen. She thought about giving up. But instead, she decided to try one last thing. She opened a social media platform and typed. Has anyone here ever tried investing and failed miserably? I'm about to give up, but I wanted to know if I'm the only one who went through this. Elizabeth didn't expect a response. But within minutes, her notifications started flooding in. Of course. Everyone makes mistakes at first. The secret is not giving up. I lost money in my first 6 months. Now, I'm a full-time investor. You just need the right method. Want to learn together? Among the dozens of comments, one message stood out. Rachel, a woman with twice her experience, sent a private message. Elizabeth, I saw your post. It reminded me of when I started. I can teach you what I learned and help you avoid making the same mistakes. What do you think? Elizabeth hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger. But what did she have to lose? She accepted the invitation to join a private group of women investors. There, she found stories of women who had also been doubted, who started knowing nothing, who made mistakes but persevered. Rachel quickly became her mentor. You spent your life teaching, Elizabeth. Now, teach yourself. The words hit her like a lightning bolt. Yes. She had spent decades helping others learn. Why couldn't she do the same for herself? This time, Elizabeth didn't invest blindly. She studied. She took notes. She watched technical videos. She learned to read charts, analyze companies before investing, and build a long-term strategy. At first, her earnings were small, just cents, a few dollars. But the difference? Now she knew what she was doing. And for the first time in years, she felt something she had lost long ago. Control over her own life. A month later, Elizabeth checked her account, and her money was growing. Not in an extraordinary way, but it was increasing. She smiled to herself. For the first time, she saw that she was capable. And this was just the beginning. Days turned into weeks. Elizabeth's routine was now different. In the mornings, she still did household chores, but as soon as she finished, she locked herself in the small makeshift office in the corner of the living room. Over time, the numbers in her account began to change. At first, it was just cents. Small gains that seemed insignificant. Then, dollars. And one day, she realized she had earned the equivalent of a full salary, just from investments. She couldn't believe it. There she was, a woman who, just months before, was afraid to even open her bank account, now analyzing charts, making calculated decisions, and watching her money grow. She was finally in control. But as she stared at the computer screen, an idea began to take shape. What if there are other women going through the same thing? What if I could help them? The idea grew inside her like a flame. Without wasting time, she grabbed a new notebook and started writing. How to start from scratch. Mistakes that almost made me quit. How to turn small earnings into extra income. How to become financially independent. The list kept growing until it filled several pages. But soon, doubt crept in. How am I going to teach all of this? Elizabeth spent the night researching blogs, social media, and content creation. That's when she discovered that YouTube was the most accessible platform to share her knowledge. Her heart raced. It was exciting. But terrifying. She had never recorded a video in her life. That night, after a long day of studying and taking notes, Elizabeth sat in front of her laptop camera. She tried recording her first video. "Hi, I'm Elizabeth Carter," and she froze. She sighed, stopped the recording, and started again. "Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to teach," another pause. The lighting was bad. The audio was distorted. Her face looked strange on the screen. After 10 frustrating attempts, Elizabeth groaned and dropped her head onto the desk. That's when she heard a noise at the door. She turned and saw Tyler, her son, standing there, watching her. "What are you doing, Mom?" he asked, his expression intrigued. Elizabeth's stomach twisted. For months, Tyler had either ignored her or mocked her. She expected another sarcastic comment. She swallowed hard. "I'm trying to record a video about what I've learned about investing. I want to help other women, but I don't know anything about editing." She braced herself for an impatient sigh, a snarky remark. But to her surprise, Tyler frowned and was silent for a few seconds. He crossed his arms and tilted his head. "You really want to make this work, don't you?" Elizabeth felt a lump in her throat. "I do." Tyler sighed, scratched the back of his neck, and stepped into the room. "All right, I can help you." Elizabeth's eyes widened. "What?" He shrugged. "I know how to edit videos. I'm not a pro or anything, but I can do better than this." For a moment, Elizabeth was speechless. Then, a knot formed in her throat, and her eyes filled with tears. For the first time in a long time, her son saw her as something other than a failure. The channel begins to grow. In the following days, Tyler started helping her with the channel. "Mom, this lighting is awful. Let's use natural light. Your audio sounds muffled. I'll teach you how to fix it. Your thumbnails need to stand out. Let me handle that." Little by little, the videos started to look more professional. Elizabeth recorded the content, and Tyler edited with dedication. At first, views were minimal. But then, something happened. One of the videos started gaining traction. Comments appeared. Women shared their stories, thanked her for the tips, and asked for more videos. The channel was growing. And on a day Elizabeth would never forget, she opened her YouTube dashboard and saw the notification. Your channel has been monetized. She covered her mouth with her hand. Tyler, sitting next to her, smirked. Congrats, Mom. You're officially a YouTuber now. Elizabeth laughed, wiping away a rebellious tear that had escaped. She was no longer the woman who had lost everything. Now, she was a woman who had rebuilt herself. And her final turning point was just beginning. Elizabeth's fame grew week after week. Her YouTube channel had reached numbers she never imagined possible. Her blog was generating a consistent income, and women from all over the country were reaching out to thank her. She was no longer the fired teacher. Now, she was Elizabeth Carter, the personal finance expert, the woman who helped others rise again. And, as expected, those who once dismissed her began to see her differently. Daniel, the husband who had belittled her for months, watched his wife's transformation without knowing how to react. At first, he mocked her efforts. You really think those videos are going to support you? But as the months passed, Elizabeth started making real money. She paid her own bills, without relying on his salary anymore. Then, one day, he walked into the kitchen and saw her signing some documents. What's that? He asked. Elizabeth looked up, calm and composed. My business. I'm officially the owner of my own company. Daniel furrowed his brow. For the first time, he seemed to realize something he had never considered before. Elizabeth didn't need him anymore. That's when his behavior changed. He started being nicer. He asked questions about her work, trying to understand how everything worked. One evening, while she was in her office editing a video, he leaned against the doorframe and said, "You're really incredible at this." She just smiled and kept typing. But then, one day, Daniel finally asked the question he had been avoiding for months. Liz, do you still want me here? Elizabeth finally looked at him. I wanted your support when I needed it, Daniel. But you only saw my worth once I became independent. He lowered his head. I know. A long silence filled the room. I don't hate you, she continued. But I've learned that I can live without you. The decision was made. No fights, no arguments. Just the end of a cycle. A few weeks later, Daniel moved out. And for the first time in years, Elizabeth felt a lightness she hadn't felt in a long time. If Tyler had once been ashamed of his mother, now he bragged about her to all his friends. One afternoon, while Elizabeth was organizing her videos and responding to messages from followers, she overheard her son on the phone in the living room. Dude, my mom has a huge YouTube channel now. Yeah. No, you don't get it. She gives investment tips, and tons of people follow her. Elizabeth smiled to herself. She remembered the time when Tyler mocked her, doubted her efforts. Now, it was different. A few minutes later, he walked into her office, rubbing the back of his neck, looking a little embarrassed. Mom, are you making more videos this week? Yes, I am. He hesitated for a moment, then said. If you want. I could help with the script. Or social media. I mean, I could maybe learn more about investing too. Elizabeth's heart warmed. I'd love that, son. This time, she was the one who couldn't hold back the tears. A few weeks later, an unexpected email appeared in her inbox. Dear Elizabeth, we would like to invite you for a meeting to discuss the possibility of having you as a financial consultant for our institution. We believe your expertise would greatly benefit our students. With gratitude, Principal Thompson. Elizabeth laughed to herself. The same school that had discarded her like dead weight now wanted her back, not as a teacher, but as a mentor. The following week, she walked into the school, but not to accept the offer. As she entered the reception area, the surprised looks of former colleagues and staff intensified her sense of triumph. Mr. Thompson greeted her in his office with a smile. "Elizabeth. It's such a pleasure to see you again. You've built something incredible." "Thank you," she replied smoothly. "Well, I'll get straight to the point. We would love to have you as our financial consultant. Our students could learn so much from you, and, of course, we are willing to offer a considerable payment for your time." She tilted her head slightly, observing him for a few seconds. "Funny, isn't it?" she said, crossing her legs gracefully. "A few years ago, I was no longer useful to this school. And now, I'm valuable." The principal cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, I suppose at the time, we didn't realize your full potential." Elizabeth smiled. "Well, I did." She picked up her purse, stood up, and extended her hand for a quick handshake. "Thank you, but I already have a job." And without looking back, she walked out the school doors. This time, with her head held high, knowing that she would never let anyone undervalue her again. If someone had told Elizabeth Carter that her greatest transformation would begin after 40, she would have laughed in disbelief. But now, here she was. Months ago, she had felt obsolete, discarded by the world. Now, she traveled to different cities, stood on stages to share her story, and inspired thousands of women to change their own lives. And to think that it all started with a simple notebook forgotten in a cardboard box. "You are living proof that it's never too late to start over," said a young woman, emotional, after one of Elizabeth's talks. Elizabeth smiled. "Age doesn't define who you can become. Fear does." Looking out at the full audience, she saw her own reflection in so many women there, women who had once been doubted, trapped in dead-end jobs, stuck in broken relationships, weighed down by dreams that seemed unreachable. What made the difference? The decision to try. What if she had given up after her first failure? What if she had believed that learning something new was impossible? What if she had accepted the labels that called her outdated? She wouldn't be here. But she was. Before, she depended on a fixed salary, trapped in a system that saw her as disposable. Now, she had complete control over her time and money. Before, her income came from just one job. Now, she had multiple sources of income, investments, her YouTube channel, mentorships, and speaking engagements. Before, she felt invisible in her own home. Now, Tyler was proud of her, Daniel was no longer needed, and her self-confidence was unshakable. Elizabeth hadn't just changed careers. She had created a new purpose. It's never too late to start over and learn something new. Society is always trying to dictate timelines. By 30, you should already be settled. By 40, you should already be successful. By 50, you should just accept your life as it is. But who said life has to follow this script? Elizabeth challenged this logic. She started investing after 40. She built a successful YouTube channel when she already felt obsolete. She rebuilt her life when everyone told her it was too late. And she proved that the only right time to start over is the moment you decide to act. If you're sitting there thinking your time has passed, remember this. You can learn a new skill. You can change careers. You can build the life you want. Elizabeth did it, and so can you. If this story inspired you, leave a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and transformation. And remember, life only truly begins when you decide to live it.